Welcome to FDA Academy. The course you will be taking today is CGMPs, the essentials of good manufacturing practices. The objectives of this course will be for you to gain awareness with the need for consistent quality and consistent compliance with drug regulations. We will focus attention on 5 key elements: people, premises, processes, products, and procedures. By the end of this course, you will know the law and the regulation as well as the international guidelines that drug manufacturers marketing in the United States must follow. You will also know why it is important for everyone to take responsibility for good manufacturing practices. Finally, you will know what may happen if GMPs are not followed and how far-reaching that impact may be. Let's start with the history of GMPs. Prior to 1906, there were no laws in the United States that regulated drug products. It was not uncommon to find products being sold in stores, door to door, or on street corners that contained ingredients that we now know can be very dangerous, such as cocaine-laden toothache drops, cough syrup with morphine and chloroform. Many products were labeled with outlandish and unsubstantiated claims, such as being able to cure cancer. At the time, there were also no requirements to perform clinical trials or have any evidence that the labeled claims were true. But it was actually a book titled The Jungle that described appalling conditions in meatpacking plants that propelled the passage of a law designed to assure purity in both foods and drugs in interstate marketing. That law was called the Pure Food and Drug Act. And note, the word act means that it is law. To regulate the act, the Federal Bureau of Chemistry evolved into what we know now as the Food and Drug Administration. In 1937, continued tragic health events stemmed from the drug and cosmetic industries, including the marketing of an eyeliner that caused blindness in several women. An even more tragic event happened in the pharmaceutical industry around the same time. Sulfanilamide had been a drug used to treat infections in tablet form. But in 1937, the S.C. Massengill Company formulated sulfanilamide in a liquid format, using diethylene glycol as the solvent. No toxicity studies were performed on this formula because there were no laws requiring it. The solvent, diethylene glycol, is also known as antifreeze, and the new formulation caused over 100 deaths, many of them children. After this tragedy, the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act was passed in 1938. This law continues to be the foundation of our current good manufacturing practices regulations. Although fewer of these incidents occurred after the passage of the FDA Act, other tragedies occurred that spurred the enhancement of GMPs. In 1961, a medicine used for morning sickness in pregnant women was marketed in Europe and was discovered to be the cause of severe birth defects. The FDA rejected the use of thalidomide, preventing this tragedy in the United States. However, this did instigate the amendment of the FDA Act to include clinical trials to prove medications were safe and effective. So, what are GMPs? GMPs, or Good Manufacturing Practices, are the regulations that govern drug production. For the most part, the term GMP and CGMP are synonymous. The C stands for current and is meant to imply that this is a living document, and as technology and best practices are defined by industry, the expectations are then set as current. The Code of Federal Regulations, and specifically 21 CFR 210 and 211 are those current good manufacturing practices that apply to drugs in the United States. Regulations are defined as a rule of order having the force of law, and as mentioned, the word act in its legal definition means law. Let's pause for a quick knowledge check. What tragedy led to establishing the FDA Act? What is a regulation? What regulation governs drug production in the United States? What does the C in CGMP stand for? To help categorize the multiple scopes of GMPs, let's start with what we would call the 5 P's or pillars of GMPs. The first and most significant are the people that make drugs to help society manage their medical conditions. The GMPs are a Code of Federal Regulations. Section 211.25 states that each person shall have adequate education, training, or experience to be able to perform their duties. Therefore, if at any time you feel that you have not received the appropriate training for any job that you are assigned, it is your obligation to notify your manager, training coordinator, or human resource officer of your training needs. Managers are equally responsible to assure that those who report to them are provided with all the tools needed to carry out their responsibilities. GMP activities should not be performed without oversight until the person performing it is adequately trained and competent in that activity. The environment in which drugs are made are important to assure the quality of the drug is not negatively impacted. This means that there should be suitable air quality and effective pest control procedure, appropriate ventilation, and space for production, and the building should constantly be in a good state of repair. Processes are the steps by which you manufacture, perform analysis, package, hold, or distribute drug products. These processes should be well defined and controlled to assure that batch to batch, the drugs will consistently meet its specification throughout its shelf life. Every drug product should have a defined specification for its components or ingredients, as well as for the finished product. Whether it's the grade of talc in tablets, purity of water in injectables, or the speed at which a capsule disintegrates, there should be a defined specification for each component, and there should be assurance that each lot of material and finished drug met that specification. As a part of the pharmaceutical industry, your standard operating procedures, or SOPs, are basically your written recipe for how you perform GMP functions. Whether a batch record format, stability testing, media field simulations, or any other GMP activity, there should be an accessible procedure for learning and referencing. The reason these procedures are referred to as standard is because the expectation is that it is to be performed the same way every time by every person. If it is not followed to the letter, there is a deviation. An appropriate follow-up should be performed. If you assume that GMPs are just for the quality and production team, you couldn't be more wrong. Everyone has an impact on GMPs, whether directly or indirectly. Here are some examples of how people and groups that make up a company have an impact on assuring GMPs are followed. Research and development may take a drug product from concept to an optimal formulation to treat a condition. They will maintain a development report which will become the blueprint for the master batch record. The clinical group that sees the drug product through its various clinical trials prior to commercial use makes sure that the clinical trials are conducted appropriately, and that there is a placebo and blind studies to measure the actual effectiveness of the drug, and that all necessary safety and efficacy data is collected and available for review. Regulatory Affairs submits the applications, whether for a new molecular entity or a generic drug. They maintain the licenses and interact with the FDA and other regulatory agencies to make sure that all submissions are complete so that the drug can eventually get public access. The Quality and Compliance Group. They are integral to many of the activities and have to be a part of significant quality decisions, including releasing of batches, investigations, and corrective and preventive actions. Production staff have to complete batch records and make sure the directions are properly followed. If there are any deviations, the production staff documents it. The accounting staff purchases the right materials for production as well as make sure other vendors and building maintenance costs are paid. There can be no production without running utilities. Human resources make sure that the right people with the right skill set or potential are hired. Where necessary, they make the hard calls in personnel continued employment decisions. These are just a few examples, but every person in the company, regardless of role, has a direct or indirect impact on GMPs. Everyone may not have the same role, but everyone is equally responsible for maintaining GMP compliance. A common phrase in the pharmaceutical industry is that quality must be built in. This means that regardless of the part or step, everything must be quality oriented and performed using best practices. Let's pause again for a quick knowledge check. What were the GMP 5 Ps discussed? Who is responsible for GMPs? What do you do if you feel that your training is insufficient? Most countries have an agency responsible for making sure that the drug products marketed in their country is safe and effective. Examples include the EMA in Europe, Anvisa in Brazil, Health Canada, and in the United States, the Food and Drug Administration. The FDA performs inspections within the United States and in other countries that market drugs within the United States. Their mission is to determine compliance with 21 CFR 211 and the FDA Act. When objectionable conditions are found, they are written and presented on a Form FDA 483. There are a few types of inspections that the FDA performs to verify compliance with GMPs. General or routine inspections cover the quality system and any of the other 5 systems. Pre-approval or PAI inspections are performed prior to approval of a drug. For-cause inspections are performed when there is certain information or strong potential for serious violations in specific areas. Follow-up inspections may be performed after an inspection revealed serious violations and a need to verify corrective actions have been implemented. Occasionally, an inspection is initiated simply to randomly monitor drug product quality. In those cases, the inspection will consist only of a sample collection. If you have been in the pharmaceutical industry a while, you may be used to the 2-year FDA inspection cycle. Currently, This has been replaced with the risk-based inspection process. So if you have a clean GMP record, you may see less of the FDA. The FDA's commitment to GMP adherence does not stop at the border. Any country that markets drug products in the United States must agree to an on-site inspection to make sure it is operating in a state of control. Refusal or a failed inspection may result in a warning letter or import alert, preventing receipt of their drugs into the United States. In 1990, a collective of countries gathered to standardize regulatory requirements for drug quality from a global perspective. This group was called the International Council for Harmonization, or ICH. Those standardized guidelines are known as the ICH-Q documents. For example, ICH-Q7 details GMP requirements in all member states. Now for the hard part. What could go wrong if a company does not follow GMPs? Unfortunately, history has taught us that occasionally companies have not remained in compliance, and the fallout has been significant. The FDA has authority to implement several actions, including recalls, warning letters, seizing the product, and preventing the company from continuing operations. When there is a breach in the adherence to quality and GMPs, there follows a potential loss in reputation and trust. Substantial fines may be applied. Company profits plummet. Jobs are lost. In extreme cases, the company may even be closed and criminal charges filed. The GMP Regulations 210 state, "The failure to comply with any regulations set forth in this part shall render such drug to be adulterated, and such drug as well as the person who is responsible for the failure to comply shall be subject to regulatory action." As you can see, there are penalties that may apply to both the company and individuals within the company. The Park Doctrine is also used to hold corporate executives accountable when they claim that they were not aware of GMP deviations at their facility. But the greatest impact is the potential for innocent consumers attempting to manage their medical condition to have an adverse reaction to products that were not made under GMPs. These reactions can be side effects, allergic reactions, the product simply does not work or loses efficacy, even death. Something that may seem to be trivial, such as a label, can be extremely dangerous. These two blood thinners look similar, but they are very different. One is 1,000 times stronger than the other. If a company did not follow GMPs and the labeling was mixed, this could cause extreme harm to anyone receiving it. Here are some real-life examples of problems that occur when companies do not strictly adhere to GMPs. Glass and other foreign particles found in tablets. Mold found in the injectable. These have the potential to cause extreme harm. We all must be diligent to make sure that all drug products are pure and made with quality. But when we consistently follow GMPs, we participate in the improved health of the consumer. Our companies continue to operate and provide jobs. Our businesses grow. Let's pause again for a quick knowledge check. Who is responsible for quality and following GMPs? What may happen if GMPs are not followed? Who is impacted if quality is deficient? What is the ICH And what are ICH guidelines? The pictures you see here are actual photographs of drug manufacturing environments. Although these are somewhat extreme examples, these situations have happened and continue to be a problem. However, it doesn't take extreme examples like these to create a problem for consumer and company. We must all be diligent and support an environment of GMP compliance. Some key points that I would like to emphasize as we wrap up this course. GMPs are not just a good idea. They are the law. They're codified by the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act and Regulation 21 CFR 210 and 211. Failure to follow these regulations can result in fines and/or imprisonment, and they may harm patients who depend on quality drug products. Failure to follow GMPs can also result in product recalls, loss of public confidence, and closure of the company. Drug products are the responsibility of everyone. Each person can be impacted by one failure. Eventually, every drug manufacturer will be inspected by a regulatory agency such as the FDA, and it will take everyone's involvement to have a successful outcome. For other on-demand pharmaceutical trainings, go to fda.org. Don't forget to get your certificate of achievement. Contact fda@gmail.com.